Hello and welcome to the Posture Dojo podcast. My name is Sam Miller and I'm here sharing my own journey and speaking with experts about posture correction. Diagnosed with a 85-degree kyphosis scoliosis at 18 years old. I ignored it for many years, cemented many issues, compensations, imbalances, and about 5 years ago started a very intense journey due to some pretty severe health consequences that started appearing from ignoring the posture. Many of us are left to our own devices to figure out how to restore our best postures, restore flow in our body. And that's what we're doing here on this podcast, diving into themes such as breathwork, movement, exercise, different holistic methods of tapping into our body's innate ability to unleash our most primal flow. And today I'm excited. We have pretty all-round badass who's teaching breathwork and surfing and jiu-jitsu, former military guy. Let's dive into this conversation. Adam, how are you doing? How did you end up here today talking about breathwork and holistic healing methods?
Hi, Sam. It's great to be on the show. So I got into breathwork a couple of years ago. So I left the military in officially May 22, but unofficially January 22 was when I went on my terminal leave. And during my time in the military in the Royal Marines Commandos, I'd been on 4 operational tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I was having, even though I don't like to admit it, but I was having issues with kind of like my, not mental health per se, but like brain fog and my mind going into crazy states. And I started doing my sort of like breathing techniques. So I'd turn all the lights off at night before I was going to bed. And I was just literally sitting down, started off with like 5 minutes, just counting my breaths, and it slowly got into like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. And I starting to engage into that, and it really helped me with that. I used to wake up in the middle of the night about 2 o'clock in the morning and not be able to switch off, thinking about lots of different things. You know, going from 22 years in the military to going outside and running a holistic therapy business and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy. You can imagine, you know, that significant change has quite a mental effect on you, because it's all the uncertainty of what's happening out there. And then about a year ago, I started getting to reading a lot more like wellness books and stuff. So I read a book by James Nestor called Breathe, which was almost kind of not life-changing, but it was putting the education piece down to what I was doing. And then I read a book by Patrick McKeown called The Oxygen Advantage, which was looking at more sports performance orientation in breathwork and nasal breathing and how it can improve marginal gains when it came to sports performance, but also sort of like general health as well. And using those techniques and putting them into my holistic therapy business, you know, putting the body into the parasympathetic mindset, so you know, the rest and digest, calming the body down, I could create a more relaxing environment for my clients from the therapy side of things, doing the Bowen technique, but also using the breathwork to calm my own parasympathetic nervous system down when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, because it's a very much hands-on submission grappling type of sport. Lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, different body types, different weights of people. So you can imagine I'm quite a light guy, you know, 75, 78 kilos. When you've got, you know, a guy that weighs 130 kilos, dripping sweat in your face and trying to, you know, choke you out and snap your arms off, you need to be comfortable in those uncomfortable situations. And I found that the breath work really kind of helped me with that as well, which was a significant thing for me professionally and personally as well.
So breathwork seems to be at the core of kind of your practice now. You know, there's a pretty, you know, common meme these days about in the US Marines, they teach you how to box breathe to calm the nervous system. Is that true? Are they doing breathwork in the military these days?
I have heard that, and there's a bit of a stereotype with box breathing as well. I watched a little bit of a documentary with an American football player, and in fact, it was Patrick McEwen's one of his podcasts, and the guy was saying he was doing box breathing 20 minutes before he went out onto the field, and then he got energized about an hour later. So there's kind of like a counter argument for that. Actually, box breathing gives you, releases energy as opposed to relaxing you. I guess it depends on how long you're doing those breath holds for and breathing in and out for, which is how it reflects in your parasympathetic, in your nervous system as well. So, but yeah, it's something that's developing there. I live literally a mile and a half down from the Commando Training Centre where they train Royal Marine officers and Royal Marine Commando infantrymen as well. And I've tried and get breathwork into kind of the PT side of things because I'm a former PTI myself, physical training instructor. So I still have contacts there. And I'm doing a little bit of work, sort of like the beginning half of the year with the physical training instructor course, giving them a couple of tools, combining that with a little bit of cold water therapy. Again, I live a couple of miles down the road, luckily from the beach and the sea, so they do some beach runs down there. So I'm going to be tying into them, and hopefully it'll be the start of something that can really help them out.
I think it's handy to know, or I guess differentiate between some of these breathing practices, right? Because some of them upregulate us; they put us into that that state of alert. The Wim Hof breathing, for example, is something that you don't want to do when you're going to sleep. You want to do it if you're waking up and trying to get the system on alert, right? So, different methods for different times. What are some common kind of practices that you like to recommend for people who want to kind of pick off maybe, a couple different breathing practices for common day-to-day scenarios?
So all breath work, it stems from something called pranayama, which is, thousands of years ago is what yoga used to be. Yoga used to be meditation and breath work. Leading on to that, a few hundred years, 1,000 years moving on from when it was originated is where all the stretching and the flow came with that, and then that the breathwork side of things and the meditation side of things then was instigated and put into yoga. So when it comes to upregulating your breathing, I like to try and stay away from mouth breathing, so breathing in and out through your mouth. I focus on nasal breathing a lot more. The reason why that is because your nose is designed mechanically to bring the breath into the body. So you've got 3 or 4 layers of filtration system that's in the nose. And when you breathe in through your nose, it's a little bit harder to breathe in through your mouth. And it filters the air that comes through, it warms it up, it moistens it, so it prepares the air for breathing before it goes into the lungs. On the flip side of that, there's that old saying of being a mouth breather. It's kind of one of those things that could be classed as an insult. I don't know, depends how thick-skinned you are, right? And but the reason for that is that when you breathe through your mouth, your breath goes straight into your lungs, right? But when it goes straight into your lungs, you need a balance of carbon dioxide and you need a balance of oxygen within your lungs to be able to have that diffusion process between carbon dioxide, the waste product of the body, and the oxygen going back into the cells, which is kind of like the nutritional side of things, right? With food creating energy, oxygen is also energy as well for your body. So when you're breathing through your mouth, you actually breathe out more carbon dioxide. So you're inadvertently, and this is like, don't quote me on this, but you're kind of slowly asphyxiating yourself because you're breathing out more carbon dioxide, which means then the oxygen that you're breathing in can't diffuse into your body and your cells, which then in turn, what makes you feel like, I don't know whether you wake up in the morning and you've got a dry mouth or you feel like quite lethargic and tired. generally that's a symptom or an effect of breathing through your mouth at night. So you're slowly asphyxiating yourself, which means less oxygen into your body. 40% of the oxygen in your body goes to your brain. So if your brain's not being fed oxygen, then it's not going to operate correctly. So when you go to sleep, I'm going on massive tangents here, I apologize.
Okay.
So when you're breathing and your body doesn't get that oxygen, then it's not going to be able to create that algorithm in your brain to like sleep's supposed to get rid of all that short-term memory for you to reproduce and have a calmer mind for the next day to prepare yourself. So when it comes to upregulating, like I say, I like to get people to breathe through the nose, and you can do those hyperventilation techniques, but do them through your nose. So you can start off by doing like a gym workout. Kind of do 3 sets of, say, 30 slow but hard breaths in and out through your nose, with 30-second to a minute break in between each of them, which what you'll find is you might feel a little bit of tingling in your fingers or pins and needles within your arms and your fingers. And that's kind of like you're creating a carbon dioxide, what you call a hypercapnia within your body. So your body is craving oxygen, but you're creating the CO2 tolerance. And then you can start, moving into more in-depth breath work. So something called yogic breathing. So for you to improve your functional breath, you need to use your breathing muscles better. And I think one of the things that people miss a lot when they're doing like workouts, for instance, is that when we talk about the core, you talk about your stomach muscles. And if you know anything about anatomy and physiology, your core isn't just your stomach, it's also, your lower back and your back muscles as well. But a lot of people neglect the internal part. So your diaphragm, your obliques, those intercostal muscles that come down your back. And those are the muscles that help expand and contract your lungs. But one of the biggest muscle groups that people forget about is your diaphragm. If you have a strong diaphragm, then you're going to be able to control your breath a lot more. One of the things that I used to struggle with a lot with Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been training nearly 10 years now, is that I used to get quite a lot of lower back pain. And when I started engaging a lot more into the breath work and the yogic breathing, which I'll talk about in a second, which incorporates those breathing muscles, I didn't realize that, which I should have done, is that the internal breathing muscles, your diaphragm and those other supporting breathing muscles, support your lower back. So without having strong internal breathing muscles, a lot of people with lower back pain can also have that as a repercussion of having weak breathing. Now, how you use your diaphragm a lot more is by breathing deeply through your nose. Now, your listeners can have a go at this if they want to. Is one of the easiest things to do to see whether you're breathing, where you're breathing from, is just putting your hand on the upper part of your chest, so just over your heart and onto your stomach. And then all you need to do is just look down and just breathe normally. And when you're looking down, just focus on what part of your chest is rising and falling. Now, one of the main aspects of being a mouth breather is that you don't use your full lung capacity. They primarily use the upper part of their chest, so they don't use the full lung capacity. The lower part of your lungs is where the main alveoli sit for breathing, because it's the bottom of the lungs. Gravity pulls, the blood down in your body. Those alveolar sacs that are sat in the bottom of your lungs are where you get that transfusion of carbon dioxide and oxygen for breathing, to go into your bloodstream, to go into your hemoglobin, to get taken through your veins, your arteries, your capillaries, to get, promote that energy transfer within your body. So if you're breathing through the upper part of your chest, which generally has fewer alveoli than they do at the very bottom, then you're not going to be able to transfer that oxygen and carbon dioxide as effectively as you would do breathing through your nose. Now, again, putting your hand on the upper part of your chest and the lower part of your chest, all you're going to do now is just breathe through your nose and just take 3 really deep breaths in. But what I want you to focus on is when you breathe in, okay, you're going to firstly fully exhale, and then you're going to concentrate on breathing in and filling the bottom part of your lungs up. And the way that you can feel that is by filling your belly up first, and then you can feel it in the lower part of your lungs, and then into the upper part of your chest. So just do 3 breaths like that, okay? So I'm breathing through my nose, I fill the belly up, then it comes to my chest and my ribs, and then the upper part of my chest. And then I'm going to exhale and breathe out and push it all back out again. And then when you breathe it out and it comes to the lower part of the exhale, you should be able to use your diaphragm to push it out and pull your belly in. And that pulls the air, pushes the air back out. Then breathing in again through your belly, your lungs, the mid part of your lungs, and the upper part of your chest, and then all back out again. Have a little slight pulling of the belly at the bottom of the breath.
It's at that bottom of the breath that, sometimes you can even get in and start to actually feel the diaphragm, right? Under the rib cage.
Yeah, exactly. So some of my clients, what I get them to do is I get them to lie on the floor. And we do this like what we're doing sat in the chair, but lie on the floor. Sometimes you can put a cushion or something weighted. I don't know, if you want to be mental, you can put like a kettlebell on your chest to kind of like focus on the like working the belly and bringing the air in from the bottom of your chest. But also you can do something where you, at the bottom of your exhale, is then you can pull your stomach in, which exposes the bottom part of your rib cage. You can then use your fingers then. You can't really see on the video because my camera's put it down a little bit more here. So when I breathe in here and you can see the bottom part of my rib cage, you can help activate your diaphragm by just getting your fingers. I'm not like prodding them, so you're like trying to pop it, but just feeling the bottom part of that muscle group there, the bottom part of your diaphragm, which can help with the activation of your diaphragm. Using your diaphragm and doing nice deep breaths with some short breath holds, creating a carbon dioxide tolerance within the body is what is going to help your functional breathing, which is going to help with your sport marginal gains, which is then going to help with the longevity of your well-being. Kind of going back to your original question, I digressed massively there. I apologize. So
you're on it though. I mean, this area and this type of breathing, yeah, there's a lot of functional, long-term benefits, but I think I'd suggest some of the most common things that listeners here might be facing are, well, one, with scoliosis, kyphosis, there's a collapse, there's a structural integrity collapse of the spine, which obviously the rib cage extends from. So what you'll find is that you have one side of the lungs is far more compressed. And it's this type of breathing deeper, stacking the breath from the inside. Sometimes a lot of different techniques. There's the Schroth rotational angular breathing. So that's where you're kind of breathing sideways to create space, and then you're breathing back to basically de-rotate the spine, using the breath. But I'd say one of the really common ones that I haven't heard as many people talk about is sucking in the belly. A lot of people, when they don't want to show their belly bulging out a little bit, so they're sucking it in. And if you're doing that chronically for years, you're kind of clustering or clumping the fascia, which is something that I've been fascinated by recently in terms of addressing that before we're trying to change our posture or change our breathing. Because if we've been sucking in for many years, we've got this fascia which is kind of locking it in that way. And if we try to do these deep belly breaths, it's much harder. We have to kind of expand this web which has been clumped for so long, right? So that's why some of this breath work is very beneficial to start realizing and understanding that, because if we're really tight here, we're going to be naturally chest breathing, and it's going to take a lot of effort and intention to change that.
I think also what you can kind of tie in with that nicely is some people can formulate something called paradoxical breathing. Have you heard of that before?
No.
So instead of when you're breathing in, you're expanding your belly out and filling your lungs up at the top. It's the opposite. So when I'm breathing in, I'm pulling my belly in, which is the counterintuitive for your diaphragm. Because when you're filling your belly up, your diaphragm is going from that sort of like inverted kind of top part of the circle, and when you breathe in, it's pulling down to expand and pull the oxygen into your lungs. And then when you're breathing back out again, you're creating a sort of like a reverse effect where you're creating less volume in your lungs. So instead of having that, how can I do it here? So sort of like when you breathe in, your diaphragm's like this, and when you breathe back out again, it's pushing the air back out. So when it's going back out again, if you use your belly to pull it back in, it's helping the air go back out to create less volume in there. With paradoxical breathing, it's the opposite way, right? So when I'm breathing in and I pull my belly in, then you're hindering your diaphragm from working correctly. So inadvertently, when I'm breathing back out, I want to create the rest, the separate, the opposite, right? So I'm pushing my belly out, but when I push my belly out, I'm creating more room to fill my diaphragm, but it's actually trying to push back out again. So then it creates a sympathetic kind of nervous system, which is where people start to hyperventilate a little bit and they start to panic, because when you start to breathe faster, again, going back to kind of the word mouth breathing, when I start to breathe faster, your breath and your body wants to work in the path of least resistance. Breathing through your nose can be quite difficult. Different people have different issues, deviated septums, blocked noses, colds. They might have had their nose broken, previously. It can be difficult. Breathing through your mouth is easy, right? Just breathing in and out, but you breathe faster. So to create that relaxation within your body, breathing through your nose slows everything down. It creates that parasympathetic side of things. When you're talking about like the Wim Hof method, brilliant. I'm not knocking it whatsoever. I've used it previously. I've used lots of hyperventilation techniques, but I would probably suggest, and there's lots of papers written on this as well, that doing those hyperventilation techniques and the other techniques that you're talking about, absolutely amazing, but do it through your nose, because you're inadvertently giving your diaphragm and those breathing muscles a workout, because breathing through your nose slows the breath coming into your body down. But also, there are two chemicals that are created in your nose. One of them is very important. It's called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. And vasodilator, when it gets put into the blood system, it creates the vessels and the blood vessels within your body to expand. If that's the case, and when it expands, then you can have more carbon dioxide and more oxygen put into those cells, which are then going to be more functional, which means that your body's going to operate better. If you don't breathe through your nose and you don't put nitric oxide into it, then you breathe through your mouth. Again, you're creating that disparity within your body as well. Plus, if you don't have carbon dioxide in your body, and by the way, carbon dioxide is a really good thing in your body. There's this massive myth out there that it's a bad thing. You don't want carbon dioxide. It suffocates you. It kills you. If you don't have carbon dioxide in the body, you can't breathe. It's simple as that, right? If you don't have an equal level of carbon dioxide and oxygen in your body, it creates an imbalance within your body. It creates more acidity. With an increased acidity in your body, you're more prone to illness and lots of other ailments that are out there as well. It lowers your immune system because it lowers your white blood cells. If it lowers your white blood cells and you start to get ill, you haven't got the immune system then to start fighting off all those viruses. So there's lots of things that are all connected to your breath, which I guess is the stereotype, the stigma that comes with breath work a little bit, is where it's like very yogic and very woo-woo-y and it's too spiritual. And, you know, you talk to the average human being about it, they're like, that, mate, what are you smoking, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is like a pathway or a conduit to that, but it's also the way that we kind of balance this bag of chemicals and minerals and different elements that we're kind of balancing as alchemists, right, in our body. I highly recommend, choosing that path of more resistance through the nose to breathe. For me, I found that mouth taping was a great way to start that. And you don't need to put the entire mouth in tape. You can just have a strip along the front so you can breathe on the sides. That took me a while to realize that I didn't need to have that painful ripping off every morning. Just a strip to really just start training that nose breathing. You know, obviously I have a deviated septum as well, which I think is very highly linked with the posture. You know, when you have a wedge-shaped vertebrae and you've got this collapse, you've got part of your rib cage that's compressed and part of your rib cage that's more expanded. And in that situation, the breath, if you're not paying attention to these things, it is going through the path of least resistance. So for me, that was mouth breathing into the already exaggerated side of my rib cage, you know, exaggerating my curve in the spine. So not good stuff. And then because I had the tighter core and the belly, partly from just sucking it in to not, you know, to look a little slimmer, but partly just to hold myself up because I had this imbalance higher up, right? So there's all types of different things. And I've realized on the path to healing that, you know, it is the breath, breathing into that path of more resistance and doing the breath work. It is called breath work, right? Where we're aligning ourselves on top of that breath. And then also releasing and getting things out of the way that might be obstructing us on that process. So that might be these subconscious chronic tensions that we have to hold ourselves up in a certain way. It might be the fascia that develops there. It might be things that we're holding in our mind mentally that are expressing themselves in our body as well. I'd like to kind of, you know, walk into that area a little bit. How do you kind of identify this? And obviously, like, a lot of this vocabulary it's a lot, especially for a teenager who's been told, listen, you've got some scoliosis, and they're getting thrown a lot of terms where, you know, even anterior and posterior and carbon dioxide and oxygen, it's a lot of concepts to understand. So how do you approach patients or people that you work with when it comes to kind of identifying these different issues when it can come from so many different areas?
I put it into layman's terms. Look, I'm making out probably sound that I'm a bit of a boffin. I wouldn't even put myself into that realm. It's collective knowledge over a certain amount of time, right? So when I talk to my clients, a lot of the therapy kind of clients, the average demographic people that I come through are probably from 30 through to 80 years old. And a lot of people don't really understand anatomy and physiology probably as much as people that are, come from that walk of life or from that job threshold. So I will drop the certain words in there. You know, you're talking about kyphosis, lordosis, and talking about posture. It's a bend in the spine. So, using that simple terminology, it's a bend in the spine forward, a bend in the spine back. It makes an S curve, or, it's an S curve to the left or the right of your spine. Just putting things into layman's speak for people can really kind of hit the mark. But if you double it up with the biomechanic terminology that comes with it, I think that really helps. Also, being empathetic to them as well. But, coming from from quite a sporting background, I have been since I was a kid. I surfed since I was 14, athletics, rugby, and all those kind of things, all the stereotypes that comes with, I guess you could call it a jock, right? Is that over the last 42 years of being on this earth, I've had quite a lot of little niggling injuries that come with lower back pain, shoulder pain, knees, ankles, all that sort of thing. So when I have my clients that come into the clinic, I don't always go, oh yeah, remember that I had this, and I tell them about my stuff, because at the end of the day, they're coming to you about them. It's not about you. So having that empathy with them, and then being able to relate to it as well as your knowledge and your experience within your field, your specific field, is kind of what can make a holistic therapist, a breathwork facilitator, better than somebody that's just done the course because they've been interested in doing it, and they're just regurgitating the knowledge that they've been taught by their tutor, because there's a lot of that out there. I do see it, especially sort of like over social media. It's put out there. But if you can empathize and relate to people, put it into layman's terms, but also put a little bit on top of it so they're gaining some knowledge as well, they can go away with that and go, do you know what? I'm learning something, but this person's also helping me as well, if that makes sense.
For sure. And I'm curious, you've lived a pretty intense life, many years in the military. You're very active, a lot of adventure, extreme sports, and your jiu-jitsu. There's different ways to deal with stress. One way is you go to the jungle and you don't deal with any of the outside world, and you're naturally at peace, and you're like, wow, I'm such, a peaceful being. And then there's, we practice putting ourselves into these stressful environments, and we basically kind of work up our tolerance in these stressful environments. So we're practicing maintaining that calm and peace and relaxing the nervous system as we're pushed into these more and more, stressful situations. So, we want to operate. And so personally, my current path is looking for, I'm building businesses. I enjoy the, free diving and doing these sports where I am kind of putting myself out there. I guess my path when it comes to, relaxation versus stress is like I'm looking to become as relaxed as possible in increasingly stressful situations. I'm curious what your thinking along that is, and maybe like a technique to maintain your relaxed nervous system in these more stressful situations.
So with that, I would probably say that by doing things that you enjoy doing, you've created a mental anchor for your own psychology and for your own mental health. Jiu-Jitsu and surfing, I've realized now with age and experience, is that they are my mental anchors. From my time in Afghanistan and Iraq and the military and the things I've seen and the things I've seen and done, if I didn't have those anchors to focus on outside of what I'm doing or outside of my job or outside of my family, then potentially, I'm not saying I would have, I would probably potentially be more prone to mental health issues, anxieties, stresses. Whereas, like, I'm lucky enough, to have a pension that I'm getting, but also do things like in my life that I do for a job that I actually enjoy doing. I know some people aren't lucky enough to be able to do that. So I would probably suggest that when people do those sort of things that put you in a high stress situation, you can almost use that as a tick list to say, like, when stuff in your life gets tough and hard, you can use it as a tick list and go, do you know what? I've done something harder than that or more stressful than that. I used to say to when I was taking recruits through training, each different step that they take was a tick in the box. So a 4-mile run was probably like the hardest thing you'd done. The next thing you're going to do is, like, I don't know, a weighted load carry over 6 miles was the next hardest thing you've done. So that's a tick in the box. So each time you go back and do these things again, you can relate this to life. You can go, do you know what? The thing I did before was harder. So you put yourself into that relaxed state already. You've got that mental stability right there, good to go. The flip side of that would be with your hobbies and your interests and your pastimes. If you're able to understand, you talk about free diving, diving deep without any oxygen, potentially that you've got that potential to pass out, to suffocate under the water. That's a stressor. But if you're able to downregulate your breathing, like we've been talking about, using, I'd like to use the mnemonic LSD, not the drug, light, slow, and deep breathing, slowing your breaths per minute down. The average person breathes anywhere between 13 and 20 breaths a minute. If you can use certain techniques to lower that down, so between 6 and 10 breaths a minute, you're then putting your body into that parasympathetic nervous system. Now, if you can use the breathwork techniques to control your breath when you're in those increased stress situation, like freediving, like the example you've used, then that's going to resonate into everything else that you do in life. So, you come home from work and, you've had a stressful day. You might have been, shouted at by your boss. I don't think people shout anymore, but they might do. I don't know. And you'll be able to use that past experience to be able to go, do you know what? I'm going to calm myself down. I'm going to use my breathing techniques, turn all the lights off in the house, like I mentioned before, and just or find, even if you're in that workspace, everyone can, I don't know, go to the toilet and close the cubicle door, put some earphones in and just put 5 minutes onto your stopwatch and, use that LSD, light, slow, and deep breathing. Slow your breathing down, slow your breathing rate down. Put yourself in a better physical and mental situation, and then you can go back and start dealing with whatever's going on.
When you're going to dive into the deep, it's a great kind of measuring stick to, like, how calm you actually are. I find that the more I can relax and be at peace and feel safe, the deeper and longer I go. If I'm panicking, if I'm worried about something, if I'm thinking and like the mental chatter is going on, I'm burning that oxygen and I'm not lasting as long. So it's again a practice of, and I think that practice of being calm, be like having that internal safety, that internal peace is key to that, for the breathing, for the free diving, but also when we're going into the body to address and kind of retrain our body to let go of certain things, tensions and compensations that we might have in the body. When we're breathing through and exhaling, we're kind of retraining it with that new state of calm, of peace, and of safety a lot of the times.
I think when you're talking about, especially like, the kyphosis situation that you have, is when you start practicing these things as well, is that if you can get yourself into a good habit of, when you're going into a meditation or, going through a breathing session, is getting your posture correct and training your body to be in the correct postural position while you're doing it. So while you're doing that, and it takes repetition over and over again, your body adapts to that as well. So by your body being able to adapt, it will then reflect then when you're kind of walking around, you're sat in a chair, you're talking to somebody, your body will automatically go to that position. So by creating habits from the things that you're doing, especially in the relaxed state, that should hopefully help you reflect when the stressful situation arises. And also when you are conscious of your breath as well. Like when I started looking into breathing and now being a breathwork facilitator, I'm consciously conscious of my breath, probably 90% of the waking time. Whether it's I'm in my car, I'm light, slow, deep breathing. I'm going out for a walk with my wife. I'm doing small little breath holds to improve that. The same with the car journey as well. Small little breath holds while I'm doing it. I mean, I'm not talking like breath holds to the point where I'm going to pass out and crash. But also,
Right. I mean,
during sport,
you're using the accelerator pedal essentially. That's the way I see the breath. Really, is just something we can we can hammer it. When we know how to use it, we can put the pedal to the floor a little bit when we need it, and when we want to chill and save gas, we can ease up.
exactly. I mean, I'm not saying that you should be conscious of this 100% of the waking day, but on those times where you've got that grey space where you're not thinking about, I don't know, what you're cooking the kids for dinner, what's happening next, when's the next meeting, what time I've got to be at work, I've got to put petrol in the car, I've got to go shopping, I've got blah blah blah, all of this stuff. In between all of those functional, normal human being things, God, it is normal, isn't it? Those normal human being things is the time where you can use that grey space just to do little things and focus on, without sounding woo woo, focusing on that inner mentality, that inner you, giving your, it only takes a couple of minutes sometimes, and just taking those few minutes just to slow your breathing down and be conscious of what's going on, especially kind of, you're talking about when you're free diving, you're conscious of your breath, of slowly breathing out, one, to kind of equalize the pressure from the water pressure on your lungs and your body, and two, when you slowly breathe out, forgive me, you tell me if this is wrong or not, it's only when I've been in the swimming pool or I've done some surf training, slowly letting that air out can actually prolong the amount of air that you can hold your breath for. Because you're consciously focused on it, you're not focusing on all the other little evil things that are like starting to chatter on in your head. The same when you're meditating or kind of just sat there consciously. If you can focus on your breath and focus on the air coming in and out of your nose, whether it's you're listening to the sound it makes or the feel that it comes out, whether we've got beards, you can feel the air coming on your mustache, or I don't know,
Yeah.
the hair in your nose like moving. If you can really slow it down so you can kind of like feel that, then you're taking yourself away a little bit, and that's what you need.
Yeah, the perspective, and the perspective is everything. And that perspective, if you have this awareness of these different systems, your nervous system, your autonomic, which has your parasympathetic and your sympathetic, and then you have your fascia. Like the more of these awareness, the more awareness we have of these systems, the more effective our perspective can be, right? So when we have these postural challenges, sometimes we have these compensations, and we don't have an awareness that our glutes aren't activated, right? Because we're holding our posture with our lower back instead of our glutes, which should be doing the work, right? The biggest muscles in the body, like they're often neglected with people with these postural, scoliosis, kyphosis. So you mentioned, like when you sit down to meditate, going into that correct posture. Could you walk me through what that is? Because I'm noticing everyone has a different version of it. Obviously, there's our neutral default, very efficient kind of posture, which is a bit more static, and then we have postures how we move and express as well. So I'm curious, when you're sitting down to meditate or even standing to meditate, how do you define the correct posture?
So with my clients, a lot of them, like I say, I mentioned that they're working behind desks. They get a little bit of lower back pain, upper back pain, that neck strain, and it's all to do with they're sitting down for long periods of time. Like we mentioned before, your head weighs between 14 to 16 pounds. What do people generally do through the day? They're kind of heads down like this. So all that strains through the upper neck, which then creates like a little bump on the back of the neck because, the top part of the cervical spine is struggling, and it's really difficult, and you lose the strength in the neck muscles. And then when you try to bring them back, that's when they create that upper body strain. So one of the key things that I try and get people to do is just work on their upper body to start with. So one of the key things I get people to do is like nice and relaxed is they lift the shoulders up, they bring the shoulders back a little bit, and then they just drop them down. At the same time here, I get my chin and I just pull it back. So that part of my head is now lined nicely and I haven't got that little tilt forward in my head. And I keep that posture there, whether I'm meditating or I'm standing up. And again, this is a conscious thing, right? I have to be conscious to be able to do that. On top of that as well, the majority of people also that I see have anterior pelvic tilt, which causes a little impingement in the lower part of their back. Again, that's down to their hip flexors being too tense, and strain in their hamstrings and not engaging their glutes. So when they start to engage the glutes and they pull their hips forward and they lift the shoulders up nice and relaxed and pull them back and drop them down and pull their head back, you'll find that back is nicely aligned then. Your spine and your body wants to sit on your skeletal system. It doesn't want to hang off in different angles, and that's what creates the tension within the body. So by doing those little things, so shoulders up, back, down, pulling the chin back, whether it's you're seated or stood up, pulling and engaging the glutes, pushing them forward, you can create a good posture for your body to be in, which then, if you're continually doing it and conscious of it, then when it comes to day-to-day practices, walking around, sitting down, watching TV at the office, and you're conscious of it, your body then automatically does it. It's very similar to the breathwork side of things. So if you are conscious of your breath and you're doing it for a long period of time, your breath rate will come down. So your breaths per minute will drop from 14 to 20 down between 6 and 10 just by being repetitive and habitual in what you're doing. And if you can do that, you can create a good body alignment and just a good well-being by doing just a few simple little things.
Well, yeah, and that is a simple goal for everyone. Six breaths a minute. That's 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, average breath, right? So that's really where we want to be. That's a key that is an important part of longevity as well. So this has been amazing stuff. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences. What types of offerings do you have at the moment, and where can people get in contact with you for that?
So I do with the breathwork side of things. I do one-to-one consultations. We do an initial assessment of 30 minutes, just to kind of see where your functional breathing is, and then the idea behind the rest of the sessions, whether they're in person, if you're in the local area. I live in Devon, one of the counties in the UK. I can do it one-to-one. So I'll take you through some breathwork sessions and give you some little techniques to take away and do. Nothing too exertive, but it's just the knowledge that comes with it, but also online as well. So I can do consultations like we're doing here. You can go online. It's the breathworkrevolution.com. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, again, local area. If you're ever in the UK or in the Devon area, Mahara Jiu-Jitsu. Super simple, Mahara-jiu-jitsu.com. And then also holistic therapy, local area, Devon Bowen Clinic.co.uk. And I'm going to pitch the Grumpy Surfer podcast talking about surfing, military stories and grappling as well. So you can find that on your podcast provider.
Beautiful. Amazing. I mean, quite a life you're living. Thank you for sharing the techniques that you breathe through life with. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Make sure to take some light, slow, deep breaths today. Slow down that breath rate. Get down below 10 breaths a second, and you're on a good track. Get the things out of the way that you need to take those breaths and live fully. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. See you in the next one.